Welcome to this explainer. I want you to picture this. A massive gas carrier, fully loaded, finally reaches its destination and drops anchor. Now, to anyone watching from the shore, it just looks like a physical operation coming to a pause. But in the commercial shipping world, that splash of the anchor is literally the starting gun for a high-stakes financial countdown. Every single minute that ship sits there is fiercely negotiated, carefully tracked, and totally legally binding. Okay, let's dive right into this core conflict. On one side, we've got the ship owners. They want speed. They want efficiency. Why? Because a moving ship is a profitable ship, and they're the ones eating the daily operating costs. On the flip side, we have the charterers, the cargo owners. Their priority is flexibility, so they can manage their supply chains and terminal capacities. So when a delay inevitably happens, who takes that massive financial hit? Well, the answer to that entirely depends on the rules written into their contract.
The exact moment this whole commercial mechanism kicks in actually comes down to a single piece of paper. It's called the Notice of Readiness, or the NOR. This gets tendered when the ship is at the specified location and is, in all respects, fully ready to go. The absolute second that NOR is officially accepted, a literal money clock starts ticking. Depending purely on how fast the cargo operations go from that point forward, that ticking clock can either cost or earn the owner tens of thousands of dollars.
To really grasp how this clock works, we need to look at the Voyage charter. You can think of it as hiring a vessel for one specific trip. The owner still runs and crews the ship, bearing all those operating costs, while the charterer simply pays freight for the cargo that gets carried. Now, in the tanker and gas carrier trade, the absolute gold standard contract form everyone uses is the ABSBA TankVoy. Its clauses spell out exactly who is responsible for what, starting the very moment that ship arrives.
It is absolutely fascinating to look at this dual reality. Out on the deck, the physical reality is the crew hustling to prepare manifolds, hooking up these incredibly heavy hoses and opening valves. But layered right on top of that is this invisible commercial reality, entirely dictated by the charter party. While the crew's out there turning wrenches, thousands of dollars are shifting behind the scenes, based on the exact minute those hoses are connected and disconnected. Let's move to a real-world scenario and see how this builds. Imagine an owner agrees to transport 4,500 metric tons of propylene out of Al Jubail. The ship arrives and is safely moored at 6 a.m. The master immediately delivers the notice of readiness, and it's accepted right then, 6 a.m. on the dot. But the clock doesn't always start that exact second. Under standard ASPA TankVoy terms, the commercial time actually starts running 6 hours after the NOR is sent. That just gives the terminal a brief window to get prepared. So by 12 noon, the countdown is officially on.
And that countdown is what we call Laytime. Laytime is truly the heart of the Voyage charter. It's basically the fixed, prepaid number of hours or days that the contract allows for loading and discharging the cargo. Think of it as a grace period that's already baked into the freight rate the charterer paid up front. It's their allotted time to get the job done. A super common industry standard, and the one used in our Al Jubail example, is exactly 72 hours of total laytime.
So you essentially have two distinct phases to any port stay. If the terminal operates smoothly and all the cargo is handled within that 72-hour window, great, everyone is happy and nothing extra changes hands. But if cargo operations drag on and actually exceed that allowed time, the contract crosses a very hard line into penalty time, and this dreaded phase is known as demurrage.
So the crucial point we have to understand here is the sheer financial weight of crossing that line. In our specific real-world example, the agreed demurrage rate was a massive $11,500 a day. Seriously, that means for every 24 hours the ship is delayed beyond its laytime, the charterer owes the owner $11.5 grand purely for tying up the vessel's time. And since it's usually calculated pro rata, every single extra hour is costing nearly $480.
Now, this brings up a really critical question, and it's one that leads to major disputes all the time. If a ship is delayed because of bad weather, terminal congestion, or just something completely out of the charterer's control, do they still owe that demurrage automatically, or is it only applied if the delay was actually their fault?
The answer perfectly highlights the brutal, unforgiving nature of maritime contracts. Demurrage accrues automatically the second laytime expires. It is not fault-based at all. It operates purely as pre-agreed liquidated damages, meaning you don't need to prove the charterer was negligent. You literally only need to prove that the contracted time was used up. This absolute strictness is exactly why ships' captains and terminal operators heavily scrutinize every single minute logged on the statement of facts. But time actually isn't the only metric that gets heavily penalized or rewarded in a voyage charter. We also have to factor in cargo volume and speed, which brings us to two other absolutely vital commercial concepts: dead freight and dispatch. These are the other sides of that money clock. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how dead freight works, straight from the math in our source documents. Say the charter party gives the ship captain the option to request up to 4,725 metric tons of cargo to max out the ship's capacity. The captain formally requests this amount. However, the charterer only manages to deliver and load 4,650 metric tons. That leaves a shortfall gap of 75 metric tons.
While the charterer still has to pay for that missing 75 tons, this is dead freight. It's compensation owed to the owner for failing to load the full agreed cargo. The logic here is pretty simple. The ship still burns the exact same amount of fuel and takes the exact same time to cross the ocean, so the owner shouldn't lose out on freight income just because the charterer's tanks ran dry. On the flip side, we have dispatch. If the charterer finishes loading and discharging faster than the allowed laytime, they actually get a reward. Dispatch is essentially demurrage in reverse. It's usually paid out at half the demurrage rate, acting as a nice little bonus for handing the ship back to the owner early. Ultimately, whether you're dealing with dead freight for missing cargo or tracking laytime down to the absolute minute, everything in a voyage charter is highly calculated. But nothing is quite as severe as the demurrage clock. To quote the standard directly, it is a liquidated damages figure that accrues automatically once agreed laytime is used up, regardless of who caused the delay. Every minute spent idling at a terminal is a minute where commercial leverage shifts.
So a voyage charter is absolutely perfect for a single, tightly controlled trip where the owner manages the ship and the charterer basically just pays for the ride. But what happens when a charterer's ambitions grow? What if they don't just want the ship for one trip, but want to dictate its movements for years? Or, even more provocatively, what if they want to take over the vessel entirely, crew and all, and play owner themselves? We'll unlock those powerful commercial structures in our next explainer.